Good afternoon, good day, everyone, and welcome to Governing Your Data in a World of Constant Change. My name is John Horodyski, and I am joined today by my esteemed DAM colleague, Michelle Roell. Good morning, good day, good afternoon, Michelle. What we're going to do is we're going to do a quick introductions of ourselves, and then we're going to go straight into a sort of virtual fireside chat that will last for about 20 minutes. And more importantly, we would love to hear all your great questions. So find your question Q&A on the panel, and we will start addressing those. We're preferring to wait till the end to answer the questions, but if something is really a burning issue for yourself, we'll take that into consideration. And with that, let's do some quick introductions. The next slide. Let's see if that moves. It's a slow move today. It's a Thursday. It's a good thing. My name is John Horodyski, Managing Director of Salt Flats. Been doing digital asset management, metadata, DAM, all those amazing governance good things for over 20 years now. In addition to the consulting work, I'm also an adjunct professor over at San Jose State University, where I teach a graduate course in DAM, do a lot of public speaking, very familiar with the lovely people at the Henry Stewart organization. And I have a new book on metadata coming out in November. And now let's the star of the show, Michelle Roell. Over to you, Michelle.
Thanks, John. Hopefully my slide will come up soon. Let me know.
Yeah.
All right, fantastic. Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Roell. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm representing to you today from Los Angeles, California. I'm a taxonomist at the Editorial Creative team at Netflix, and I've got a lot of experience with DAMs, master data management, governance, and metadata for media and entertainment industries, having worked now at Netflix, but prior to that, the Walt Disney Company. My current role today really focuses on a promotional assets taxonomy, trying to unify our promotional assets against our product teams and our marketing teams. So it's a lot of artwork and AV and digital media that describes the different promotional media that we're creating. My previous roles, again, I've said at the Walt Disney Company, we're with the Enterprise Metadata Services team on a master data management product where we focus on IP, and then the Studio Technology team where I worked on the Studio DAMs metadata model. So before that, I actually had a career as a motion graphics animator at MTV Networks and Viacom. So I really have a lot of experience with creating the assets that I'm now organizing. And then I have my Master of Science in Information Studies from the University of Texas at Austin, and I have a BFA from NYU. And because now I work at Netflix, I get to tell you all about all the awesome Netflix shows. So I'm watching The Chair, I'm watching Grace and Frankie, so season 7, incredible, and Vivo, which was really cute. So I really recommend it. And then I'd encourage you to LinkedIn with me. Here's my LinkedIn URL there. We very possibly will be having future roles as we grow our taxonomy team, and I'd be really happy to talk with you all about it. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
So then everyone gets to see us. Based on your recommendation, Michelle, I'm definitely going to go check out The Chair. Huge Sandra Oh fan. Brilliant. I've got to check that out. All right.
She's
all right,
fantastic.
everyone. Here we Is it? Oh, gosh, she's just brilliant. All right, Michelle, tell us a little bit more about your background with data governance and the work you're currently doing just with Netflix right now.
Yeah, sure. Specifically, happy to. So I joined Netflix about 5 months ago. It was really about being able to help build out the taxonomy practice they'd already started and build out the team. So again, I mentioned something about being able to connect with me in case you're interested in that opportunity to continue that work. And then I really am running this third governance committee that I've been building around trying to maintain our promotional assets. So again, I mentioned that I work on a promotional asset taxonomy. It's really about being able to say that a trailer is a trailer is a trailer, that term can be the same. It doesn't matter if a product team or a marketing team has created it, that we know that that asset should still be called that value. So that's really what we're trying to do within the taxonomy that I'm running, although I have fellow taxonomists who are running other pieces and other governance committees. So I'd say that really my entire career, from what I can tell, has been about creating different creative assets and then now managing those assets. And the work that I'm doing here at Netflix has really been a blend of that, which has been really exciting and really fulfilling.
The fact that you even say that you have a team. I know a lot of people attending today, some of them might be solo DAM managers, solo librarians. We hear that a lot in our industry. So it's so encouraging to hear someone say the word team. It denotes multiple people doing multiple good things with taxonomy and metadata. So that's very, very encouraging that you say that. So thank you for doing that. All right, so let's dig in a little bit more then about data governance. Great big words. What is it? But what does it really mean? What is it? How it's defined for you in your organization, and really, why is that so necessary to have data governance?
Yeah, sure. So for me, my definition of data governance, I think it really aligns with that often quoted DAM trifecta of people, process, and technology. It's data governance is a key piece of your overall DAM program, and it blends all of the people, the processes, the technology to really ensure that your metadata is kept up to date and understood across your business. So the people you need on your governance committee to help you run this governance program are all of your business super users, or at least a few of them, who actually know the assets and can understand how they're being used in your DAM. You need your technology partners, so a product owner or a business analyst, someone to help understand the analytic side of the data going on in your DAM, and then really an information professional, so someone like me to facilitate that governance committee, because you need it to be able to or to continue to create that order and maintain the metadata inside of your product. The process is really all about being able to set up this governance committee that has rules that is going to create that order to help you maintain that metadata. So I just wrote a whole article for Henry Stewart about governance committee policies and how important they are in really defining your governance goals and your scope. So you need that documentation, but also you need your metadata model. You need that documented. You need the control vocabularies that you're using documented, any internal or external sources. And then you also need to decide how a user can ask you to change all of this work. So you've set up all of this, but a user is going to need to be able to say, hey, this isn't working for me and I need to be able to update it in a different way. So all of these processes are going to be key in helping you actually keep your data up to date, which again is what I consider the literal definition of data governance. And then of course, all the technology behind this. So the metadata model is often in a spreadsheet. So pick a spreadsheet tool and learn to love it. Your governance will also be probably in a spreadsheet or some sort of document tool. And I know that there are other tools for data management, so taxonomy tools or even the master data tool that I used at Disney, but you'll still be using a lot of documents and spreadsheets. And then honestly, the DAM itself is a big part of the governance technology piece. So you really need to be aware of who can make changes to your metadata model under the hood, like in the engineering team, but then also what are the user permissions and who actually has edit capabilities within your DAM. So for example, you wouldn't want to leave a field open to free text if you actually didn't intend for that field to be free text. And then you'll want to work with all of your engineering partners when you do find kind of moments where things aren't working as expected. So just know that whatever you decide in your governance, that'll actually impact the final product, of course. So again, for me, data governance is about ensuring that your metadata is really kept up to date and that it's understood by all the business users.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you frame that with that powerful triumvirate of the people, process, technology. It's good to remind ourselves that we all have DAMs, or some of us are looking for DAMs. That's great, but don't forget, you still need that people process part to help the whole thing work together. And I love the fact that you even included the super users. I always believe that super users are both qualitative and quantitative. They're in there getting assets, creating assets, using this, but they also have the best feedback. They're actually giving you some great information. For those of you out there going, what super users? They're out there. Go find them. They are definitely going to be your advocates going forward with super users. So Michelle, we now know what it is, but how do you set it? How do you even begin? How do you set this up? And how do you facilitate a governance committee?
Yeah, sure. So for me, you landed on this beautiful moment where you or your consulting partners have come up with this really great metadata model. So congratulations. But then tomorrow comes, of course, and you find out that you're suddenly supporting a new area of your business, or you're merging with another company, or you maybe didn't get as many user interviews as you wanted to, and other folks are saying, hey, how come my assets aren't in the DAM? So that's when I think really having a strong governance committee can help you determine how to add, to keep parts of your metadata model, to delete parts that may not be relevant, so that your DAM really reflects the business as it is today and not as it was a year ago. So for me, it's really a question of who did you first interview? Who were those super users who really weighed in about the metadata model originally? Who cares about their assets? And you want to ask those people to continue to consult with you on this governance committee to be able to speak for their assets. So depending on the size of your company, I would think that this should still be a pretty small group so you can remain nimble, but it needs to represent the users of your dam. So all of my committees have been around under 20 folks, which I would say a sweet spot of maybe 10 to 12 folks. I would write that data governance policy that I mentioned before, really explaining why that governance committee is coming together and what the roles and responsibilities are. So typically there's a facilitator and then the membership, which each has a vote. I would pick a cadence that actually makes sense for that group. So meeting monthly or biweekly. You need to be able to have a change request procedure, something that your end users can understand. So that's one of the most pressing items that governance committee is going to help you set up. So how does the user ask for change? How do you debate them in the committee? And then how do you decide to approve or deny? So we have a form at Netflix that we use where users can fill in information that they want, saying, hey, I'm looking for this kind of term. And then that's where the governance committee comes in and actually kind of debates that request. When the change requests do come, I often then interview that person who's asked for the change to find out a little bit more information so that I can then bring kind of a stronger case to the governance committee so we can find a kind of baseline solution, make sure that it's not a training issue. Maybe the term is actually already in the taxonomy and they just weren't aware of it. So I would rely on those governance committee members to really ask questions, to poke holes, to debate what this change is going to mean. And then if we all agree, we accept it. And if we don't agree, then we can either stick a pin in it and discuss it more once we have some more research done. Or if we really need to make a decision quickly, which is often the case, then we often just have to make a compromise, something that we can agree on. And then we know that we want to come back to it later once we have a little bit more information. I have a very strong, healthy parking lot in my governance committee. So we have lots of things that we know that we're going to be discussing later. We just need more time and more information around those decisions. And I would say really last that everything has to be documented. That's the most important thing. And to be transparent about that documentation. So you want to have a place where your committee can see the information and then oftentimes a way to be able to communicate those changes out to your end users. So hopefully your DAMS team is already doing some communications to your end users and you can fit in with that communication.
Yeah, I love the fact that you emphasized many good things, but the documentation part is so important. Documentation will always help you. You can never get in trouble for over documenting. Just make sure you write things down. People will be like, where's the policy? Where was that decision made? Documentation will save you so much. So thank you for including that. That's an important part of anyone today listening. Start now, start writing things down. That's awesome. Okay, so you must have heard and participated in some great stories over your time of doing these types of committees. So what are some of your sort of favorite stories from the data governance committees that you've been a part of and running?
Sure, totally. So I've only been at Netflix for 5 months, like I said, but the governance squad that I facilitate has already shown how stunning they are to me. We had one week where we were in between our biweekly meetings, and we had to approve 4 new asset types within that 1 week. We did it asynchronously on Slack. We only had one subject matter expert that we can consult, and we ran into a bunch of different technical considerations that we didn't account for originally. But this team is really incredible, and they showed really great communication and made a really good impact. So those are 2 of our Netflix cultural values. And I think that really shone through with our governance committee. The other story that I think of is right when I was leaving Disney, we were really digging into a pretty good talent data question about former names and whether or not we should capture them at all. So this came up with regard to a transgender talent use case, but it's really relevant in a bunch of other use cases as well. And we weren't able to immediately implement our desired outcome, but it was really up to the governance committee to handle that kind of in-between time. Well, using the tools we have now, how can we actually approach this? And it was really great to be able to see the governance committee kind of approach this concept with a sense of being able to affect the data holistically, but also sensitively. That was really important. And then finally, I would just say that one of my favorite times from my very first governance committee, the Disney's the Studio Dam data curation working group was that I would essentially buy toys. I would buy a bunch of mini Tsum Tsums from the discount bin at the studio store, and I would use them as trivia prizes at the end of our meetings. So if you answered a question correctly based off of something that we discussed in that governance meeting, then you would win a prize. And I know a lot of our governance committee members were happy to get their Mad Hatter Tsum Tsum at the end because they were actually listening.
Okay, I definitely want to be going to your data governance committees. Can I be a de facto member or something? Why do we do governance? Because things change. And I love your example of the one example you had is because all we know about metadata is that it's always changing because language changes, our business changes, our culture changes. So that's why we do good governance, so we can manage those things in a respectful, inclusive way and have people's opinions in there. So thank you for including that part of that. I thought was very important for everyone to hear. So what do you like about data governance and librarianship in digital asset management, and what do you believe needs to change?
Yeah, I think like most librarians, I just really enjoy helping people. So I think folks think metadata is really boring, and I personally find it really fascinating. So my preference for that kind of more detailed heads down work, I think really corresponds nicely to the end users who are often, kind of running around frantic, trying to get their assets where they need to be. So I love that the work that I like to do automatically helps them. I think that's really satisfying. And personally, I'm really grateful to have found a lot of positions where I've actually used the skills that I learned in information school. My experience has been really stable in a field where a lot of my cohort has found short-term contract roles or pretty low salaries. And that's really unfortunate in my mind. Certainly I focused on corporate media, so that helped. And also the rise of streaming services, which run on metadata. And all of that timed out pretty nicely from when I graduated in 2015. So thanks. I will say that a couple things in my mind need to change though. So for me, a big one is that I think that folks need to stop thinking of metadata as magic. Every single time you retrieve an asset, it's not magic, it's logic. I think a successful asset retrieval is the end result of a well-researched metadata model and a solid DAM team collaborating across product, UX, engineering, and the business. I don't think there's any magic here. I think it's a lot of hard work and effort, and I really wish that more users understood that. And then I think really the biggest change that I want to see in our field is greater diversity and more underrepresented voices weighing in and really driving the future of metadata and DAMs. The American Library Association has published statistics saying that 88% of credentialed librarians are female and white. And I know that the ALA represents many public academic and school librarians, but maybe more so than corporate settings, but I imagine that it's probably similar, and I really still find it pretty unacceptable. So personally, I make sure to donate to scholarships like the Society of American Archivists Mosaic Scholarship. And I'm a monthly Patreon supporter for a BIPOC librarian group called We Here, which is doing really incredible work. So again, that's We Here. I've met and I've mentored with a bunch of students receiving the Association of Moving Image Archivists Diversity and Inclusion Fellowship. And I just signed up to be a mentor with Netflix's Pathways Bootcamp, which is helping students from HBCUs and Hispanic Serving Institutions, HSIs, to learn about UX and data science. So for me, I'm really bullish on being able to create ways to get more underrepresented groups to learn about and then love metadata and DAMs, because I think that we need their voices and their perspectives if we're going to continue to satisfy our users moving into the future.
I cannot say thank you enough for that. I think as we move forward, as language changes, as metadata is a part of changing language, being to allow for that diversity, equity, and inclusion, and these voices to be respectful around that is very, very important. And I also do believe that I think librarianship has given digital asset management one of the best things to let the industry grow. As a fellow librarian, I do believe that librarians have given something back to the DAM community, and you definitely presented that. Excellent, very well. So there is a lot of questions coming to you, which is great, but which is awesome, and they're being voted on right now. This is fun to watch. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for being a part of this. But let's end off on everyone wants to hear those best practices types questions, because that's why everyone is here. But what would you say, Michelle? Like, what is that one best piece of advice that you would give to someone? Anyone on the attending today going, okay, so data governance sounds great. Wow, I definitely want to do it. What would you say? What would be that best advice you could give?
Yeah, I think my best piece of advice is really within that governance committee, once you've built it up, is to be the last person to speak. So you want to make sure that you're listening to everyone else on the governance committee and really trying to understand where they're coming from. So you need to get other people's thoughts first, because your voice weighs heavy in that room, even if you're just the facilitator. For better or for worse, folks default to your expertise as a librarian. And I would say that oftentimes the assets need something different than that. I was really struck by what Jamie Wilson said during his Showtime session yesterday, saying that you should resist making your DAM's metadata work for you. It's not for you. And I think that's really important to remember, that you are facilitating an environment where other folks can use this data easily for them. And so you really need to be listening to them and not constantly speaking first.
You know what, and that goes back to librarianship, because I do believe librarian and archivists are great listeners, because they have to be, because they're all about, as you said at the beginning, they're all about helping people, and we're definitely active listening to see what's going on. Huge shout out, by the way, from librarians and archivists in the chat groups who are just singing lots of praise. So well done, Michelle. As a librarian and archivist, this is awesome. So, okay, Michelle, thank you so much for doing this. The feedback is incredible. I'm watching all these things happen on the side, but you have been receiving a lot of really good questions, and the voting's happening. So I'm just going to start going through them. We've got about 9 minutes left, so let's see what we can do for getting as much of them. All right, a question from David. Does your DAM include documents as well as images and video? And how do you accommodate the different metadata tagging capabilities of different file and document types?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And our DAM actually has explicitly scoped out documents. So I would say no, that we do not actually capture documents. We're focused, really laser focused in on those AV and artwork assets. And so with file types too, I think it's difficult to be able to kind of map a specific file type to a specific asset type. We really see that a .mov file, a QuickTime movie, can be a bunch of different asset types. So I wouldn't want to be too prescriptive in saying that one file type equals one asset type, although I understand the push towards wanting that to be the case. It often isn't.
It often isn't. That's good to hear that you're not doing documents, though. Interesting. Yes. Good decision. Next question. This is received just in the last little while the most votes. It's from Mary. Mary says, I love getting input, but we keep running across conflicting priorities. Getting lots of feedback can lead to a simple change, can grow into process improvement, updates and snowballs into something else, something huge. How do you recommend controlling scope to actually get things done? Great question.
Yeah, I would say it's interesting to hear that if one user group is feeling one way, and then it sounds like maybe in this use case that a separate user group is feeling the complete 180, I would need to get those people on the same page somehow. And often it would be separate meetings with both to make sure I understand where they're coming from. And then I would say a meeting of them together, maybe separate from the governance committee process. Maybe you don't need a bunch of other eyeballs on it, but a way to be able to facilitate that conversation between those two groups. How are they seeing these things completely separately? That, true 180. It doesn't seem like one business. If you all have one aligned business goal, your DAM should be doing X, Y, and Z. Then how are these two groups seeing it from two different points of view? And they may have different asset types and different types of workflows. I definitely understand the complexities there, but there must be something that we can do within that one shared metadata model to simplify it. So I would just encourage you to listen to both sides and get them on the same page, oftentimes by pulling them together and helping them to understand each other's use cases.
And in our collaborative virtual world right now, we can do Zoom meetings, team meetings, Google chats. We can get people into virtual rooms pretty quickly and say, let's talk. That's a good thing. Another very popular question from Kelly. Michelle, what are the most important prerequisites to successful collaboration with content creators or business users to develop controlled vocabularies? Excellent question.
Yeah, I think I would answer that by saying that it's a lot of education and advocacy up front. So it would be understanding that that content user is not a taxonomist. They're not a librarian. They're not a DAM expert. And they need to understand why you're asking some of the questions that you're asking, because they may not get why you're coming back to certain things or wanting to ask really detailed questions about file types or the different versions of assets, that kind of thing. So I think that I would start off really broad and explain, here's what I'm trying to do at a larger, 30,000 foot scale, and then really bring it down to, therefore, here are the 10 questions that I'm going to ask. And they may seem academic or theoretical, but it's all going to then lead to you actually being able to find your assets in the DAM and others being able to find those assets as well. So I guess I would come to it from a education point of view. Making sure that they understood where I was coming from. And then, of course, like John said earlier, like listening, just making sure that you understand where they're coming from too.
Excellent. There is some, this is amazing. Elaine, this is from Elena, got lots of votes. With multiple teams and agencies, deeply rooted habit of comments in different ways. For example, communication is called editable files, while internal open files are only some of the. So how do you manage that, the different way? How do you do that?
I would say that, John, you came in and out a little bit, so I feel like I only heard a portion of the question, but if it's that one team really calls one thing this and the other team calls it the same asset this, and they do not understand how, they will not use those same words, that's where you can use a couple of different approaches. One would be to have the two different terms linked on the back end somehow. So this is where having a taxonomy management tool would really make sense, where you can have synonyms baked into where you have one display term, but then they have multiple different pieces on the back end. So if somebody searches for one of those more specific terms, they get led to that one term. The other thing I'm thinking about is disambiguation, being able to say, we had an example for a poster where a poster was for this specific thing versus a poster was for that specific thing. So it was the same word, but it was meant in two different contexts. So being able to disambiguate that term was a way to be able to kind of have our cake and eat it too, in a way. So I would recommend one of those different approaches.
Excellent. Question it's from Kelly. In your words, Michelle, how can a UX user experience perspective contribute to the space of governance?
It's an interesting question. I think I would say that this is something that I'm working on with some of my UX partners now, is that we've got a lot of hierarchy inside of our taxonomy, and the UX team has helped to understand how a user maybe doesn't want to have to navigate through all of these different levels. And so they might be asking for a bunch of change requests because they don't want to have to go through that. So maybe there's a way to actually visualize those levels in a way to where the user just gets down to this level immediately. So it's not that they need to necessarily change the hierarchy, it's that they need to be able to get to this term in the hierarchy level easier, faster. And that's where your UX partners can really step in and help find ways to get here a lot faster than working your way visually through a tree. But your tree structure still actually maintains that hierarchy that you're looking for.
Yeah, I applaud anyone who wants to bring more user experience and user interactive discussion into this part. It's all part of the experience of finding assets in a DAM, and the UX UI is quite important. Here's an interesting one for you, Michelle. Do you collaborate with data science teams to contribute to knowledge graphs? Knowledge graphs are something we hear a lot about now. Do you do any of that in your current role?
Yeah, so we definitely have partners at Netflix that are building out graphs, and we are in touch with them. So my specific taxonomy is a graph, but it is not necessarily connected to a larger Netflix ontology, although we are working there. And then I would say that we are, it wasn't about the UX. It was the beginning part of your question was, can you repeat it, John? I'm sorry.
Yeah, do you collaborate with data science teams?
Data scientists. Yes, thank you. Yeah, so for me, that brings up, yes, of course, we have lots of data scientists at Netflix, which is awesome to be able to rely on them. And we have ones that are attached to our specific promotional media space. And really, I've worked with them so far on being able to run some analytics. How many things are tagged as trailer? And is that correct? Right? So being able to run numbers and getting any kind of metrics with the data scientists, that's really been a key part of what I've done in my past few months. And I'm looking forward to being able to dig in more with them.